morning everyone, we're going to continue our story of Moses. Now just a little recap in case you've forgotten. First of all, God saved Moses in a basket and he ended up living in the Pharaoh's palace, and then he had to run away because he did something really bad, and then God called him through the burning bush to give him a special job to try and get Pharaoh to let God's people go, because Pharaoh was keeping all of God's people as slaves and making them work for no money and mistreating them, which wasn't fair. So God sent Moses and his brother Aaron to go and speak to the Pharaoh, that's the king of Egypt. And he tried to persuade Pharaoh to let the people go, and Pharaoh didn't want to let them go because they were working for no money, and he didn't want to let them go. He didn't see why he should, because he thought he was the most important person in the world. He was Pharaoh, king of Egypt, but he didn't realise that God was more powerful than he was. And God sent lots of different plagues, if you remember, which were horrible things that happened to the people. So there were 10 of them. See if you can remember them. See if I can remember them. So the first one was the river turned into blood, so the people couldn't drink it. And then, and I can't remember the order, there were lots of frogs everywhere. There were flies. There were locusts. There were gnats. There were boils. There was, I can't remember. See if you can remember. Darkness and hail and all the animals dying. Well, after all these things happened, even though a lot of those things happened to the Egyptians but not God's people, Pharaoh still wouldn't let God's people go. He just said no. So God had to do something terrible to try and get him to change his mind. And sometimes really awful things have to happen in order for good things to come out of them. So God said to Moses, "Go and tell Pharaoh that I am going to send a last and terrible plague. I am going to send the angel of death, and every firstborn son in your family will die, and the firstborn animals." How scary is that? Pharaoh didn't care. But God had a plan to rescue his people, and he told Moses to give his people very special instructions so that he could keep them safe. He said, "I want you to take a lamb or a goat and to kill it and to put the blood, there we go, in a big bowl." There's a big bowl. And he told the people to dip a hyssop branch, which is a plant, in the blood and paint it around their doors. So all the Hebrews took a hyssop plant and they painted the blood around their door frames like this. There you go. And he said that will be a sign so that when the angel of death comes in the night, he won't visit your house and you will be kept safe. So they did that, and then God said, once you've done that, you need to go into your house and shut the door. And I want you to have a special meal. You need to eat the lamb or the goat that you killed, cook it up with your family, and sit round the table and have a special meal. Now the Hebrews didn't have time to make proper bread because that takes a long time to rise, so they had to eat bread without yeast in it. So it was like flat, unleavened bread. So they had their special meal, and they stayed in their house with the door shut, and they painted the blood over the top. And then night time came. It was night time. The people must have been very scared because they knew something bad was going to happen. But they'd followed God's instructions and they'd used the blood and painted it around their doorway, so they knew they'd be safe. In the night, the angel of death visited the whole of Egypt, came round the Egyptians' houses, but when it saw a door with the blood on, it passed it over and didn't go in. That morning, when the people woke up and came out of their houses, and of course they were safe because they'd been kept safe, they were woken up by the sound of crying. All over Egypt, the Egyptian people were crying and wailing. In every house, the firstborn son had been killed by the angel of death. How terrible. Pharaoh quickly called for Moses and Aaron. He said, "Get your people and go, just go." And the Egyptians wanted them to go too. "Yes, go, look, take our gold and our silver," they said. "Just clear out, we don't want you here. Look what's happened, it's been terrible." So God's people were kept safe and they were allowed finally to go. So they had to go in a great hurry and they had to pack all their things up and all their animals and all their possessions and follow Moses out of Egypt. So all along in that story, God had a rescue plan for his people. And he has a rescue plan for us now too, doesn't he? Because if we decide to follow Jesus and become a Christian, then when we die, we get to go to heaven. So death kind of passes us over. So just like in the story, when the Hebrew people painted the blood over their doors and frames, it kept them safe. In the same way, Jesus protects us from death, because when he died on the cross and was killed, that was in our place. So because he was killed and he died, that means that he takes all of our punishment. Because we always do things wrong, don't we? Because we're people. But if we say sorry to God, he forgives us because Jesus died. And Jesus took all our consequences and all our punishments by dying on the cross. So that means that when the angel of death comes one day and we die, we get to live again. So death passes us over, just like in that story today in Moses, which we call the Passover, because the angel of death passed over the houses. In the same way, when we decide to follow Jesus and be a Christian, the angel of death passes us over and God keeps us safe and he protects us, because God always has a plan to keep his people safe because he loves us so much. Now I'm going to say a prayer, so if you close your eyes and just be quiet for a while. You don't have to close your eyes, but it helps you to concentrate. Dear God, when I feel scared, help me to remember that you are always there and you keep me safe. When I feel trapped, give me space. When I feel as though everything's against me, please give me courage. Thank you that you love us so much. You have a plan to save us, just like you saved your people in the story of Moses. Amen. If you want to have a go at a little activity sheet, if you're a bit younger, there's one here. You can download an attachment and print it off. Or you could have a look on the internet if you're a bit older, as long as your parents are helping you, and look up a Seder plate and Passover and find out how still today Jewish people celebrate Passover. And there's lots of activities you could do there. So have a good week, and I'll talk to you next week for the next part of our story when we find out what happens when the Hebrews run away from Pharaoh.